Hey, did you know? In the ancient era when dinosaurs ruled the Earth, our mammalian ancestors experienced several little-known evolutionary radiations, diversifying into a myriad of bizarre species. For example, Spikyguardians clad in sharp armor, dinosaur-defying brave creatures, swimming experts that resembled beavers, masters of venom with hidden poisonous spurs, and even mysterious creatures that might have been capable of powered flight. Strictly speaking, these ancestors were not quite true mammals. Instead, they belonged to the mammaliforms. This group includes mammals and our ancient relatives. For a long time, the scientific community believed that Mesozoic mammaliforms were all mouse-like insectivores or omnivores, living cautiously in the shadow of the dinosaurs. However, in the 21st century, discoveries have shown that mammaliforms, like resilient sprouts from stone cracks, once grew into a mighty, branching tree of life. Even more dramatically, as flowering plants swept across the land during the Cretaceous period, most of these creatures mysteriously vanished. But the surviving mammals, aided by the gift of flowers, unleashed a new wave of radiation. In scientific terms, mammals are usually defined as the three major living families: placentals, marsupials, and monotremes, their most recent common ancestor, and all its descendants. Mammaliforms is a broader classification that not only includes true mammals, but also encompasses primitive species closely related to mammals, tracing back through the river of time. The early pioneers of mammaliforms, like Morganucodon, quietly appeared as early as the late Triassic. Over 200 million years ago, they were tiny sprites darting through the shadows of the undergrowth, small in size, and feeding on insects. They resembled shrews or mice in appearance. Scientists had long assumed that the survival pressures from dinosaurs kept them in a static ecological state. Only after the dinosaurs went extinct did these humble mice get their chance to flourish. However, the fossil record for mammaliforms is extremely scarce. We often have to piece together clues from fragmented bones. Therefore, the hypothesis of mammaliforms as mere rodent-like creatures was never supported by much solid evidence. When China's Yanliu Jurassic and Jehol Cretaceous were unveiled, this perception was completely overturned, as one furry innovator after another was unearthed from these rock layers. Scientists began to realize that they had undergone at least two major radiations. Among them, the first evolutionary peak occurred around 165 million years ago in the mid-Jurassic. In this evolutionary banquet, the Docodonts were undoubtedly one of the most dazzling families. They diversified into members adapted to a wide variety of environments. For instance, Docophosor was like a mole from a bygone era, possessing mole-like spade-like claws and sprawling limbs, allowing it to efficiently dig through soil and build underground homes. Meanwhile, Castorocata was a blend of beaver and otter. It had webbed feet, a beaver-like tail, and an otter's fish-eating habits, perfectly adapted for a semi-aquatic life. It could reach a length of 43 centimeters and a weight of up to 800 grams, though just a small creature by today's standards. During the Jurassic period, it was the largest mammaliform animal. Fossil evidence shows it also had dense fur similar to an otter's, indicating it was already warm-blooded. There was also the Agilodicodon, like an ancient squirrel with its curved claws and flexible limbs. It became an expert at climbing the tree canopy. Its unique spade-like incisors were tools for stripping bark and sipping sweet sap. This survival strategy of hiding in high branches created a natural barrier for Agilodicodon, helping it avoid ground-dwelling dinosaurs. Although small arboreal dinosaurs also roamed the forest, the threat was indeed greatly reduced. Therefore, there was more than one type of mammaliform that saw the treetops as a refuge. Another family, called the Herameodons, took the potential of the arboreal niche to its extreme. With wings of flight, Vilovolodon, Meopatagium, and Arboroheremia, these creatures are not from Digimon. They are real evidence that, at the crucial moment when dinosaurs were evolving wings to become birds, mammaliforms also attempted to claim the vast blue sky. Even more astonishing, the mammaliforms chasing the dream of the sky were not limited to this one branch. There were others who also embarked on this journey, and the family that wrote this chapter was the Velaticotheria. Whether it was Velaticotherium, which darted through forests preying on insects, or Ichthyoconodon, which skimmed over waters feeding on fish, their small figures left unique flight path in the Mesozoic sky. Even more breathtaking is a bold hypothesis suggesting that the Velaticotheria might have mastered much more than just gliding. They may very well have been knocking on the door of powered flight. These creatures evolved bat-like, specialized femur thigh bone structures that could effectively handle the stress of flight. Furthermore, today's gliding mammals and the ancient Harameidans all eat plants to some extent. This might be because their rudimentary gliding abilities could not support the speed and precision required for hunting. Therefore, the purely carnivorous Velaticotheria may have already surpassed the gliding stage. If this is true, then mammals would have learned to fly even before birds. This astounding picture completely overturns our understanding. It turns out that Jurassic mammaliaforms had already reached such a high degree of diversification. But why did this happen? What force spurred their evolutionary potential? When many biological lineages simultaneously undergo adaptive radiation, it is often a subtle sign of a dramatic global change benefiting all life. During the Jurassic period, the supercontinent Pangaea was undergoing an epic breakup. This earth-shattering geological event profoundly reshaped the global ecosystem structure. The fragmentation of the continents was like opening countless doors to new worlds. For the long-dormant mammaliaforms, this was undoubtedly a golden opportunity for development. Of course, their rise also depended on their own accumulated strengths. From the shadows of the Triassic, mammaliaforms were like skilled craftsmen, constantly honing their survival tools. Lactation, fur, warm-bloodedness, and improved hearing. The long-term accumulation of these key features laid an incredibly solid foundation for them to shine when the environment changed dramatically. But strangely, the dominant force of today's mammals, the Theria subclass, composed of placentals and marsupials, had a rather tough time back then. They consistently maintained a tiny, shrew-like form, just another face in the crowd you could not pick out from a nest of mice. Take this Juramaea, for example. It is the earliest known therian animal, living around 160 million years ago in the late Jurassic. So, since mammaliforms were not as constrained by dinosaurs as we once thought, why did the Theria subclass still struggle? Actually, in suppressing the diversification of Theria, other mammaliforms played a more crucial role than dinosaurs. It all came down to their head start. Before the emergence of Theria, they had already occupied most of the available ecological niches, not leaving much room for Theria to thrive. But if that is the case, why did Theria eventually come out on top? The trajectory of history had already laid the groundwork. As early as the mid to late Jurassic, about 175 to 145 million years ago, the seemingly prosperous empire of basal mammaliaforms had its foundations quietly loosening. Their territories, like a receding tide, continuously shrank from the southern continents, although their local species diversity did not decrease. Then, in the early Cretaceous, 125 million years ago, they suffered a precipitous drop in species diversity. As if overnight, a vast number of basal mammaliaforms disappeared. This change coincided with the outbreak of the Cretaceous terrestrial revolution, a global ecological transformation that completely reshaped Earth's ecosystems. During this period, flowering plants underwent an explosive expansion, from less than 5% of land plant species to rapidly reaching 80%. Such a drastic environmental change posed immense survival pressure on specialized animals that relied on old resources, causing basal mammaliaforms to fall into hardship. However, many mammalian families, with their ability to quickly adapt to new environments, rapidly prospered. One of these was the multituberculates, a group often called the rodents of the Mesozoic. Although they did not survive to the present day, they dominated the ecological competition of their time. This was because they quickly shifted their diet from insectivory to herbivory, as can be seen from their teeth, which became increasingly suited for grinding in a world dominated by flowering plants. Multituberculates precisely seized the nutritional opportunities centered on fruits and seeds, becoming the most prosperous mammalian group of that time. At the same time, the splendid flower sea of the Cretaceous also fueled the prosperity of pollinating insects, which in turn kicked off an unprecedented insectivore feast. The Theria subclass and its ancestral groups were among the main characters of this feast. For example, Eumaea nested high up in tree holes, avoiding the threat of dinosaurs on the ground. It moved through the trees, foraging for various insects. Zangiotherium was even more unique. It had a bone spur on its ankle, suspected to contain potent venom, much like today's male platypus. Even if it was unfortunately caught by a dinosaur, it could use this venomous spur to inflict a painful injury on its attacker, thereby winning a chance to escape from a dire situation. The tide of flowering plants also drove the prosperity of eusocial insects like termites. This new insect resource then gave rise to mammals that specialized in eating ants. For example, Spinelestes. It had powerful digging abilities and insectivore-type teeth, so it is speculated to be a wall breaker of termite mounds. Most notably, Spinelest was also covered in spine-like hardened body hairs, making it the first ever mammal with quills. Although these quills were not as hard and sharp as those of later porcupines, they could detach from the body and stick into an enemy. Spinelestids and the previously mentioned Velaticotheria belong to a unique mammalian group, the Eutriconodonta. This family is also independent of the three existing major families and has long been extinct. However, during the Mesozoic era dominated by dinosaurs, they were the most dazzling glory among mammals because they gave birth to the most powerful mammalian warrior of that era, Rhipinomymus. Rhipinomymus could weigh up to 12–14 kilograms, making it not only the largest mammal of the Mesozoic, but it even evolved sharp teeth capable of taking on dinosaurs. What is particularly rare is that a fossil was preserved showing it mid-meal, with the remains of a young Psittacosaurus in its stomach. This discovery completely overturned the traditional view of mammals being helpless before dinosaurs. Finally, in the southern hemisphere, the monotremes also began their own journey of adaptive radiation. Among them, the leader, Chalicodon, could weigh up to 8 kilograms, a size sufficient to place it in the first tier of Mesozoic mammals. However, its flat, bun-like teeth indicate it was just a peaceful citizen that ate shellfish or plants. Thus, it can be seen that the world of Mesozoic mammals was far from a monotonous picture of mice hiding here and there. They also evolved into a myriad of diverse lineages, even giving rise to species larger than modern domestic cats. However, when the asteroid that caused the dinosaurs' extinction struck, those larger mammals, including the most formidable Eutriconodonta, did not survive the event. Instead, it was the smaller mammals, like the multituberculates, that survived the hardship due to their smaller food requirements. On the ruins of the disaster, they rapidly diversified, unleashing a new wave of evolutionary competition. Time flies, and under the law of survival of the fittest, most ancient mammal families gradually faded from the stage of history. Only the monotremes, placentals, and marsupials remained to continue writing the legend of the beasts: the swimming paddle tail, the gliding skin membrane, the venomous ankle spur, the digging claws. Countless survival forms that once appeared in their ancestors were reinterpreted by these inheritors. Now we understand that the spectacular radiation of the Cenozoic era was not a new beginning to the story of mammals, but the glorious culmination of the Eon's long journey of mammaliaforms. From the varied docodonts of the Jurassic to the sky-faring pioneers who opened the door to the heavens, from the new mammalian nobility who found opportunity among the flowers, to the dinosaur-defying warriors who vowed never to be subordinate, all are indispensable and brilliant chapters in the long epic of the beasts. That is all for this video's content. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs